Tall, leggy models are all the rage in the fashion world these days, but not that many years ago, the prospect of being above average height was considered a major liability for a woman. And some Adelaide girls who were considered abnormally tall were given a synthetic hormone to try to limit their growth. Now those women are demanding answers, believing they were part of a medical experiment that's left them with serious side effects, including the possibility of developing cancer. Graham Archer takes up the story.
I don't like being a guinea pig, and I certainly wouldn't want my children to be guinea pigs.
We all just really want to understand what happened to us, why did it happen, and what are the long-term health outcomes.
I was hurt, upset, angry, all the usual feelings. I've cried about it, why me, why me.
Angry, the paediatrician, and sad that, we were used as guinea pigs, because I was a very healthy person. A healthy young girl.
Children used as guinea pigs in an experiment to test an exotic drug is bad enough, but the fact that neither they nor their parents were told is intolerable.
They turned a 12-year-old into a 15-year-old within 6 months, and that's physically, that's not mentally. And then changed me from sort of like a 13, 14-year-old to an 18-year-old by the time we finished.
Adelaide woman Wendy Morfett-Wright is 36, but she was just 12 years old when doctors put her on large doses of a synthetic hormone because, of all things, she was too tall.
It was a concern for my parents. They thought I was going to be too tall to pursue classical ballet, to find boyfriends, to have nice clothes, that sort of thing.
The doctors at the time used the only means that was known available to arrest growth.
They told me they would strap me off shorter and I could have a wonderful ballet career.
The drug was called Stibostril.
The object of the exercise was to make me grow quicker, cut me off shorter.
What wasn't said was this was a trial, and clearly what wasn't known was what would happen to the children treated.
It was scary in the sense that I grew up really quickly, physically, but had the mentality still of a 12 and 13-year-old.
And it didn't take long for the side effects to show, including accelerated puberty.
A lot of the time I'd end up with really bad stomach cramps, that sort of thing. I couldn't play my sports as much as I liked, and I began to get the normal sex drives that an 18-year-old would get at 12, 13, and I didn't know what to do or how to handle it.
She did it with love, with care,
and we cried a lot.
Yeah, we did.
We went back to all this emotional.
Yeah, it was very emotional because my mother has felt some ways responsible.
Janet Cregan-Wood has started Tall Girls Inc. to investigate what really went on, and believes that she and 268 other girls were part of a secret trial which started in 1959.
We all feel terrible because no mother, unless she was totally insane, would put her own child into an experimental medical situation.
Janet's mother, Peg, is bewildered as to why the doctors didn't tell parents that their children were test cases.
I trusted him. He's a very well-known person, very, very respectable person, both medically and socially.
Melbourne gynaecologist Ross Pagano was not involved in the trials, but is an expert on synthetic hormones.
It was well known that if you gave synthetic oestrogen to a growing child, that it would cause a fusion of the growth plates in the long bones, and so you could potentially stop growth.
At the age of 12, Wendy Morfett-Wright was 5'6", but it was a time when it was unfashionable for girls to be too tall. Amongst other things, parents feared they would not find husbands.
Well, this is the original article that my parents saw in the Advertiser, which explains that the doctors, we had treated 2 Adelaide girls that were on their way to being 6-footers.
So she was about 5'8½", something like that at 11. And I felt extremely concerned and wondered how much growth was going to take place and how tall she would eventually be and what this would do to her life.
I understand that we were given diethylstilbestrol, 3 milligrams several times a day.
Of major concern is that Stabistrol was also used around the same time on pregnant women to prevent miscarriage, with appalling consequences.
The fetuses that were exposed to this oestrogen while they were forming had problems later on, particularly with the development of a very rare form of vaginal and cervical cancer.
If these health issues are related to their time of exposure to this drug, and we've also taken that drug, then has it had some outcomes for us that have been negative?
Wendy has experienced her share of serious problems.
I have the symptoms of cancer of the cervix, and I've had my first mammogram. The thyroid gland has given up the ghost, and the pituitary gland's overactive now.
And other members of Tall Girls Inc. report similar side effects.
Infertility, difficulty getting pregnant, endometriosis. In particular, I think ovarian cysts is a worrying thing.
Terry Wright was just a 10-year-old child when her treatment began. 3 tablets a day for 4 years.
I was a forming young girl, and I was put on to really a high dose of the pill. So I'm on the pill when I'm haven't even really gone into puberty. So I really feel that something has gone astray in my whole system. I am infertile, and I've had a lot of gynecological problems, a lot of operations. And actually at the moment I'm going through quite a bizarre situation. I have bones in my forearm that are too long.
Michelle Pearson-Walsh's height was projected to be over 6 feet.
I was treated from about 1978 for 2 years. I've had an ovarian cyst, I've had my left ovary removed, and I've got cysts on my right ovary.
But the actual study on tall girls concluded that the side effects were minimal. And here it comes again, the medical profession closing ranks. You see, these women have no idea of how much of this hormone they were given. And in every state bar the ACT, they've been denied access to their medical records. Now, you might recall the outrageous resistance that women who were given a fertility drug infected with a deadly disease met when they asked for their files. Well, it's the same story here, and their only hope is to bring in the lawyers.
We're hoping that we'll be able to get the records through negotiation, or at least some of the information that we require. Otherwise, we may look at taking an application through the courts.
Paula Sheldon is a lawyer who believes the women have a good case.
They certainly have a right to find out what's gone on and what their long-term prognosis is. So we're really hoping that we'll be able to shed some light on that.
The irony of the treatment is that none of the women we spoke to ended up much shorter than the doctors originally predicted they'd be.
I'm 5'10.5". My prediction was 5'11.4". They didn't make short people out of us.
But the real legacy has been more significant.
I tried to suicide 3 times. I've put my parents through hell, not understanding, not knowing what's going on with myself.